Good morning, everyone. Nanda here. It is Friday, November 8th, I believe, and I haven't looked at a calendar today. And it is kind of cloudy and kind of cold. Still great weather for Northwest Pennsylvania. I was looking at the weather forecast, and it's even until December, it doesn't look like it's going to be really too bad. We should be getting snow, but we're not, and I will take it. Not that I don't like snow. I think it's very pretty when you go and look at it from inside the house. I, although I can drive in it, one of the things with MS is that it has hit my eyes. My first real relapse that put me in the hospital hit my eye. And as long as they color the roads blue, which they're not going to do, I can drive because I call it like a snow blindness. So that's one of the interesting things about this disability is that one, it's different for everybody, and some of the things you just have to give up. So what I thought I would do today is talk a little bit about the stories that I have. Um, One of the things I thought that I could do with this channel is share things for my kids and my grandkids, um, that they can go back. I'm not really sure how long YouTube actually will keep this because MySpace used to be really great, wasn't it? Anyone remember MySpace? And then it went by the wayside of Facebook. And so some of the intent is to put on video some of the stories that I have. And what I'd like to talk today about is my grandparents. My grandparents, who were from the Oil City, Pennsylvania area, and they were very hardworking people, very hardworking. I believe it was the dynamic of that generation. They were born in the early 1900s. Granddad was born in 1901, and my grandmother was born in, let's see, she was 12 years younger. She was born in 1913. So they were very hardworking people. Um, at that time, as my grandmother got older, I had to preface this. Education was extremely important for my grandparents. My grandfather was a teacher, and my grandmother also had that desire for an education. And her desire was so strong that even though at the time any education past eighth grade wasn't mandatory, she wanted to graduate from high school. And what she would do is she would get up and do her chores. She lived in a farm outside of Titusville. It was about 5 miles away. And from Titusville, 5 miles is important. And she would get up and do her chores, and then she would walk to school. I can't even imagine a teenager having that much ambition to get up early in the morning, get your chores done around the house, and then make the 5 mile trek into Titusville to go to school. Unbelievable. Uh, so, I mean, she had some experiences. There were some people that knew that she was walking to school, and they would give her a ride into Titusville. She had some bad experiences with that, with people picking her up for a ride to give her a ride into Titusville. She never really elaborated on that, but she said there were some people that weren't always so great. But she did it. She got her high school education, and I remember my grandfather saying that he wanted to live long enough to see all his grandchildren graduate from high school. That was his goal because he was obviously much older, given the time. He was probably in his 30s when my mother was born, and So that was his goal. He wanted to live long enough to see all his grandchildren graduate, which he did, because he didn't pass away until he was like 94. He was a pretty old man. But that genealogy tends to live quite a while. One of the other stories that Grandma would always say is that she was always envious of the pretty dresses that the girls at high school wore. And she was envious of all that, and she always wanted a pretty dress because they didn't have pretty dress. I mean, think about the depression. Think about when she was going to high school. It was the depression, and they didn't have money. They didn't have money, so she her clothes weren't always that great. And it wasn't until she went to one of her class reunions that she was talking about this. She was telling the ladies that she was sitting with, she goes, I always admired all you uh, I always admired all you girls for all your pretty dresses, and I didn't have a pretty dress. My clothes weren't up to par. And they looked at her and they go, where did you grow up? And she goes, well, I grew up at the farm. She goes, and the ladies said, we always admired or envied you farm kids because you ate. Imagine. Imagine that they didn't speak about this. They didn't speak about uh, that the farm kids actually had food, and the kids that grew up in the city, which Titusville is not a very big city, it really isn't. They didn't have food. They didn't have the means to grow their own food. I think that's pretty profound, pretty amazing. Um, the dogs are barking. If you hear the dogs, that's just the way it is. Um, so that's one thing that always kind of stuck with me. The other thing is about Grandma is that she didn't ever make us pancakes, ever. She never made us pancakes. And one day I said to her, she goes, I hate pancakes. And, I was probably early teens, maybe not even that. And I said, well, why do you not like pancakes? And she said, I had enough of those when we were in the Depression, uh, because that was the only thing we had to eat was pancakes, and that's what we ate. Kind of how I feel about hamburger and green beans. Uh, my parents went through a bad time, and my dad lost his job, and mom went back to work, and granddad had a pretty substantial garden, and there were a couple years there that granddad and my grandmother um, grew, picked, and preserved the food for two families, for our family and for themselves. And because mom worked and I was the oldest child, I had the honor of making dinner. Now, I was 9. I was 9. I wasn't very creative in the kitchen. And so I cooked my sisters and my father dinner. And what we had a lot of was ground beef and green beans. And we ate a lot of hamburger and green beans. So much hamburger and green beans that there was a point in my life that if I put a green bean in my mouth, I would gag. Uh, Fortunately, that isn't the case anymore. I do grow my share of green beans. I do try to mix it up a little bit with some carrots and some other vegetables there. Um, so I understood what my grandmother said at that point, where she couldn't eat any more pancakes because I experienced that with green beans. Anyway, um, so that was, and a lot of these stories, and this is where I believe that my grandchildren missed out. I believe this is where a lot of kids miss out, because we heard these stories as we were snapping those green beans in the breezeway. Yes, yes, the very green beans that I abhorred eating in the winter, we would have to go down, and Granddad would pick the beans, and there would just be bushels. I mean, there would just be, um, there were 8-quart baskets, they were pecks, of green beans that needed to be gone through. Just a lot of green beans. So we would sit there, my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, myself, um, probably not my youngest sister because she was too young, and my middle sister, my other sister. We would sit there and we would pick these green beans, and we would talk and we would share stories. And at the time, I hated it. I really did. I did not like that. Now, in my early 60s, even when I was in my 50s, I kind of look at that and go, wow, I really gained a lot of knowledge. I gained of not a lot of knowledge and a lot of my my own ambition and stubbornness and bullheadedness to forge my own way from those discussions. It was amazing. So, unfortunately, my grandchildren live not so far away, but I haven't had the opportunity when they were growing up to pick beans with them. I mean, I did it all myself. But it's just a different dynamic now. Life happens and you don't get to see your family as much. And so, one of the goals with Nanda's house is to share these stories so that if my family wants to or has the ambition to, they can go back and see what I remember about growing up. All right, that is all I have for today. I will see you later. Bye.